Everyone who is into the Zelda franchise has or has had a favorite game at some point, for various reasons. It might be for its story or character development, soundtrack, enemies, climax, or dungeons. My name is the Hyrule Historian, and today I'm going to be talking about my personal top 5 Zelda games, how they rank, and why. So, join me in this discussion. Before we start, majority of this gameplay is going to be used from videos from Henrico Magnifico and his texture packs for these games, and a few other channels, so make sure to check them out in the description below. So, grab yourself a drink or something to munch on and let's begin. Before beginning my list, I would like to make 2 honorable mentions. The first one to The Legend of Zelda, A Link Between Worlds. A Link Between Worlds is a bit of a weird one for me. I've actually never finished it. I recall playing about the first 2 dungeons but never finishing the game. I actually really like the concept, but I have never finished it because of time, or I don't know, to be honest. I might give it a try in the future. The second honorable mention might cause a few alarms to go off. And it's because it actually is The Legend of Zelda, Skyward Sword. So, the reason I haven't played this game is because of the hardware it's stuck in. The Wii U. I have a Wii U and it's on the Virtual Console, but I don't have a Wii Remote fully functional, so it's very frustrating. I've always wanted to try it because I hope the rumors on how Nintendo plans to celebrate the Zelda anniversary the next year is true and we get an HD collection with Wind Waker HD, Twilight Princess HD and Skyward Sword HD. It would be so cool. The Switch is the correct system for Skyward Sword, with the Joy-Cons instead of the Wii Remote and Nunchuck. Could it be possible to have this HD collection and a 3D collection with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask? I would love it, but I don't think Nintendo will be willing to give us more for Zelda than the anniversary of their mascot, that is Mario. But I'm just rambling. I don't even own a Switch at all to begin with. It's sad, but oh well. So, let's begin. Number 5. The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. So, at number 5 is a bit of a controversial choice and may cause a few eyebrows to raise. But hear me out. People are very attached to this game since its first release a long time ago, and I get that. But I am young, just scratching the surface of 18 years, and don't have that sentimental attachment to this game that I played just a few years ago and replayed it just about a month ago for the second time. Don't get me wrong, I love the game. Otherwise it wouldn't be on this list. So, let's talk about it. I love the setting of the game and how much lore it provides to us the players, how it changed so much and how it revolutionized how people saw the Zelda series when it first came out. I love the game, the style and how it's developed. Ocarina is a bit of a weird one for me because I don't dislike it, I do like it very much. The mechanism of time travel was very cool on some sections, and to complete some puzzles like the Magic Beans ones, or from the Spirit Temple. The game presents the setting to us very well. At a time where everything seems to be at peace, it's not as it seems. Ganondorf is plotting to take over the kingdom and he was almost successful on doing it. And to think that the fate of the kingdom and the whole land in general is on a young Hylian child from the forest. So firstly, the dungeons. I love how the first 3 dungeons are presented to us. In a sense, the first 3 dungeons are like a little tutorial on the game's mechanisms to get you used to them. I love every single dungeon, except the water temple. That one sucks. More on that later. I love the puzzles of the temples, and I did get lost on a few of them, like obviously the water temple on the part of the water level, on Ganon's castle because I didn't have the golden gauntlets to lift the big rock thing, and because of that I was very lost and going around in circles. But all of my stupid decisions aside, I was fully immersed on this game's world, on its puzzles and few side quests. Getting distracted playing the Bonku game or the Mask side quest. It has very intuitive play controls, and this classic Zelda game is in everyone's list and very deservingly. The zone music, boss music, and even ocarina music that lasts no longer than a few seconds at most is worthy of the title of masterpiece and holds a very dear place in my heart when I listen to the soundtrack. I used to boot up the game just to play the Serenade of Water, Requiem of Spirit, Nocturne of Shadow, or the Song of Storms. The soundtrack just fits perfectly for the game, in houses, shops, zones, dungeons and boss battles. Everything just fits into place when playing this game. Ganondorf is the big bad and it fits perfectly into the game and is one of the best interpretations of him in the series, ultimately achieving his goal for 7 years. I can fully understand why people love this game and I do too. I would love to see this game being brought back for the Nintendo Switch on HD, it would be perfect. People adore this game and a remake or port of this game would sell a lot, just like Super Mario 3D All-Stars. I don't see Nintendo doing something so huge for Zelda though, bringing the HD collection, 3D collection and Breath of the Wild 2 all in 1 year for the anniversary. So many games and Mario getting a mere fraction compared to Zelda would not be ideal, although many people would love it. If I had to rate my liking of Ocarina of Time, it would be an 89 out of 100. It's great soundtrack, great setting, and just the vibes the game gives off is an absolute masterpiece. Would play again. Number 4. The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker. I remember the first time playing The Wind Waker, I was completely in love with the art style and the concept of exploring a huge sea, searching for treasure, having kind of a free place to roam and do what I would want to do. Their Zelda team had the idea of having the game be as a free roam game as Breath of the Wild, but this game, although straightforward, is a masterpiece, a beauty of a game not only in its art style but also in its story, concept, and gameplay. I adore the story, taking place in the adult timeline where there wasn't a hero to stop the return of Ganon and it was up to the goddesses to seal him up. The story is lined up perfectly, and developed to perfection. After Link's sister is kidnapped by the Helma Rock King, he sets out with Tetra with nothing but the selfish objective to find his sister and nothing else. It's like one of those movies, like Doctor Strange for example. He sets out for a personal journey, but gets to become something even greater than himself. Wind Waker is one of those games that I thought would never be for me, but after playing it a few times, I adore it so much. It's great, the exploration is awesome and its gameplay is amazing. I love the combat, although it would be awesome for it to be something in the player's command instead of being there and waiting for a while to press A to do a helm splitter or something to fight the enemies. The side quests on this game are a perfect fit for the game because you're constantly traveling and sailing the Great Sea. From island to island. Getting Triforce shards and heart pieces, power bracelets and iron boots, fire and ice arrows. I love how the game presents itself, and how the team developed it. It feels more alive than most other Zelda games and well balanced. You actually feel sad seeing Link's grandma feeling sad and sick because she's all alone. The character's development is perfect, you feel like the pirate crew is there for you. You feel like Tetra has your back. This Zelda game was one of the first Zelda games to give us character development like never seen before its release. So, let's talk dungeons. Honestly, there isn't much to talk about. I feel like the dungeons in this game are great and not bad at all. They actually don't stand out to me as the best, but the design is what I love and their concept. My favorite being the Tower of Gods and taking control of the statues. Going from room to room to get approval from the gods to enter the sacred realm. I do enjoy very much the dungeons in this game, and the puzzles fit greatly to the game, like the Earth Temple and using Medley or the Mirror Shield. And also, I love the climax of the game, using almost if not all items in Ganon's tower, and having an emotional, great and very cool final battle, finishing him off and turning him to stone. The dungeons are orgasm-worthy, as are their puzzles, and Zelda games never disappoint in this aspect. Never did I think that it was getting repetitive or tedious. The enemies of Wind Waker might be considered easy when compared to beefier creatures found in other action-adventures and RPGs, but few games present foes that blend animation and personality so well. That makes them a joy to fight. We've seen enemies like moblins in other Zeldas, but they've never swaggered down a hallway with such expressive confidence, or had such a clearly dumbfounded look cross their pig-like faces when a grappling hook steals their precious skull necklaces. The way a disarmed enemy makes a mad dash for a weapon by one, a powerful sword swing makes them feel like they have a real will to survive. Wind Waker applies similar behaviors and reactions to most of its enemies, making just about every encounter interesting. Let's move on to the next point. Music. The music is just perfect. I used to sail to Dragon Roost just for the music. It's so awesome and so good. Music almost never disappoints in Zelda games, and this is no exception. The soundtrack makes you feel like you're in the game, sailing the seas, fighting enemies. Wind Waker hands down has one of the best soundtracks in the series and in Nintendo history in general. It sets the moods perfectly, and I wish Breath of the Wild 2 takes some notes from this entry. And that's not even talking about the music conducted by Link, which also is great. At the time of this game's release, it is said that I received a lot of criticism because it wasn't that mature Zelda game that everyone wanted, but I bet that they gave this game a shot and completely loved it, as I did. The dungeons fit the aesthetics perfectly, as does the music and the enemies that are found in the game. It didn't disappoint, and it will never disappoint newcomers to this title. The story takes a couple of turns and some may seem unexpected, and sailing may get a bit boring at times if you're not the exploration type and you want to fast travel as soon as possible. I truly do believe this to be the best Toon Link game and the right step forward that the Zelda team took for the future of Zelda games. I'm looking forward on playing it again if it does come to happen on the Nintendo Switch, and when I get one, of course. This game proved that you don't need crazy graphics or everything to be realistic for a Zelda game to be great. I rate this game a 90 out of 100. It's fantastic, unforgettable music, great gameplay, and very easy to get into it. It truly is one of the best. Number 3. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. As discussed in my last video, Breath of the Wild spun the series on its head, rebooting it in a sense, leaving all past mechanisms in the past and focusing on something new. Something that could attract many new players, and they did it. With new ideas, giving the player freedom and focusing more on the exploration aspect of the game and not so much on the linear style of game the Zelda series has always been known for. This game deserves the title of masterpiece and deserves so much to have won Game of the Year 2017. It took a lot of risks, and those risks paid off. The Zelda series in the past 3 years has grown immensely and will just keep growing with Breath of the Wild 2 and the future Zelda games. After playing Breath of the Wild, it's hard to go back and play the other Zelda games because in a sense you feel very restricted on what you may want to do. This game just keeps giving and giving. No matter how many hours you've been playing this game for, you will find new things and keep on theorizing on the stuff that you find in your journey. The story takes a turn when 100 years prior to the events in the game, every champion of the divine beasts and even Link fall in the great calamity that occurred. Once Link is awakened in the Shrine of Resurrection, the world feels devastated. And rightfully so. A great calamity has destroyed civilizations, towns, and killed many that were once prosperous. In your travels you are bound to find some ruins of what once was. The story in this game, as I just explained, is a bit of a tricky one. To fully understand it we need to have the cutscenes from the DLC, and have recovered all lost memories in the game. This game is absolutely amazing, and doesn't disappoint to anyone who ever picked up the game, even if they were or were not Zelda fans to begin with. This game revolutionized gaming forever. Many games after the release of Breath of the Wild took inspiration from it. Like Immortals Phoenix Rising, Genshin Impact, so on and so forth. If you saw my last video you probably may have heard the complaints, not only I may have of this game but quite a few people more. I really like the design and the idea of the dungeons being the divine beasts, but the way that they were executed were not exactly the best. Their Zelda team could do better in this aspect in the next game, using the Breath of the Wild engine to its fullest potential. Using the climbing, and any other abilities we may acquire in the future. The music in Breath of the Wild is a bit of a controversial topic. They could have done better, especially with the field music or riding music. There's a couple of good tracks, but it's kind of sad that they didn't at least keep that from past Zelda games and keep making great music that really sets the mood really well. There are only a few tracks that are actually great. The other ones are okay. I mean, the best song wasn't even in the game. I'm talking about the music from the 2017 Switch presentation. That one is unforgettable and always gives me goosebumps. The mechanisms of Breath of the Wild are like no other, forcing you to get creative and try new things, and many of these you wouldn't think possible. Or even cool things like moblins throwing bokoblins. If you think it's possible, then it most likely is. Where it takes mechanics from others in the industry, it improves upon them. Where it introduces new ones, you slap your forehead in amazement that it hasn't been done before. Breath of the Wild is development done right, and damn near the best game you'll play all year. The game is genuinely challenging, with secrets and rewards to be found around every corner. As you play, the staggering number of ways in which you can interact with Hyrule naturally reveal themselves. There is always something new to discover, but at your own pace. Somehow, the adventure never loses momentum over dozens of hours of exploration. The inspired design holds up, making for an unmistakable Zelda game that completely changes everything expected from the series. Its maps bursting with distraction but without an inch of it wasted. It is classical yet modern, drawing on the heritage of its own illustrious series while openly embracing more recent gaming trends. It is challenging yet welcoming, giving you the choice to ease yourself in or take on some of the game's most fearsome creatures. These are just some of the reasons why, after several dozen hours of play and despite not yet seeing its quest to completion, I am convinced that it is one of the very finest video games ever made. As a critic, I would give this game a 10 out of 10. 100 out of 100. I loved this game and what it brought to the franchise, and I am stoked to see what comes in the future. From a personal standpoint, this is still my third favorite Zelda game, and from my personal tier list I give it a 95 out of 100. I give this score because of the minor issues I have with the game. Although I do have those complaints, it truly does deserve the title of Best Game of the Year and one of the best video games ever made. Number 2. The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask. This may cause a bit of controversy as you don't see many people putting such a weird game as is Majora's Mask above Breath of the Wild in most tier lists or discussion videos. But not me. And that's why my videos might seem a bit strange, because I am strange and unpredictable. Majora's Mask is one of those games that will forever be one of my favorites no matter what happens. I truly believe that this is the superior game between it and Ocarina of Time. I do respect the fact that many people love Ocarina and will hold it close to their hearts forever because of how it was the first 3D Zelda game and how it changed a lot of things since it was a generational leap. But the weirdness of this game is what makes it perfect. The fact that you only have 3 days to live because the moon is going to fall gives the game an extra sense of pressure. The world, even if it was imaginary or not to the hero, was incredibly developed. There are people everywhere suffering in some way or another. People are panicking because of the moon. The Decca King is flustered because of the disappearance of his daughter and is lashing his anger out on a poor innocent monkey. Darmani in his ghostly form is regretting not having lived longer to stop what is happening to his tribe. In every single zone, someone is going through something. Majora's Mask gives you way more sense of connection to the characters, like the cafe side quest, saving the Dicky princess, saving Lulu's eggs, putting Mikau to rest, trying to save Tail and Skull Kid from the evil influence on the mask, all of this while Link was on a personal quest to find his long-lost friend. Majora's Mask is definitely a more sentimental journey and darker game than most games in the franchise. People suffering and experiencing some sort of loss or going through various stages of pain. This game explores many different levels, especially with the 3 days mechanic. It's like you're forever trapped in an endless loop and can't move forward and's not letting you move on with your life. This game is so dark, and so weird, and that makes the game perfect. The game is bigger than itself. It's very symbolic of much larger and mature topics with an infinite number of interpretations. So, let's talk about the dungeons. Although this game only features 4 main dungeons and a mini dungeon as is the moon, the team went for quality over quantity in this entry and it really shows. The 4 main dungeons are spectacular, and very well thought out. It did get a bit repetitive with the dungeon item being practically the same thing for all of them, but besides that I find no other complaints about the dungeons. They're perfect and fit right in with the style of the game. Everything from design, puzzles and enemies were made to fit this game to the core. This game actually has a water temple that isn't bad at all, and I would argue as one of the best if not the best water temple or dungeon in the series. Let's talk about the game's main mechanisms, time travel and masks. As I've mentioned, the cycle is an amazing gimmick. It gives the player extra pressure and forces the players to be more precise with the decisions they make. Majora's Mask is beautiful not only because of the gameplay and the characteristics it presents to us, but the truly beautiful part of the game is the emotion it gives to everyone. The feeling of connection to every single character in the game, even if friendly or not. All of these strange, atmospheric occurrences add an effective layer of sadness to the world, and make Termina as textured and memorable as any version of Hyrule we've seen. I love this game from the bottom up. While not as popular as its predecessor, Majora's Mask has so much symbolic meaning and is by far the deepest, darkest and saddest entry in the Zelda franchise by far, but this game can be frustrating for first-time players and might turn off some hardcore Zelda fans with its lack of dungeons. However, it still rocks and is one of my most favorite Zelda games to date or games in general. The masks are an interesting mechanic added into the game, allowing you to transform into a Zora, Goron, and a Deku. These allow you to do various things in-game, but there's a lot of masks that if you're not going to 100%, are totally useless, and others that are actually needed in most Zelda games like the bunny ears. Majora's Mask stands out to me not only as one of the most developed, emotional and well-rounded Zelda games but games in general. To this date, very few games or franchises go the route that Majora's Mask took, taking huge risks and paying off in the process. The environment fits perfectly with what is going on in-game, the music is astonishing and absolutely perfect. Never once did it feel that something didn't fit. If something was too dark or kind of eerie, that's just how the game is and how it's presented to us. The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask is quite simply a masterpiece. Then there's the music. Majora's Mask really isn't the typical fairy tale adventure game. The songs in the game are, to simply put it, worthy of any award out there, and I really mean it. The Song of Healing, the Oath to Order, Song of Time, are just a few of this game's amazing soundtrack, and they make the game all that much better. This game brought new mechanics and new lore aspects that in other games are not touched upon. Like the death of the hero, his regrets, his painful journey to find a friend that has been lost for a while. The game in itself is an amazing game, but the lore makes it so much more and so perfect. The hero of time, after saving both Hyrule and Termina, actually fails his own personal quest, failing to find his friend, failing to carry on what he learned through his life to those who came after him in his life. In the end, Majora's Mask is a tragic closure to a hero's life full of regrets, no recognition of his bravery, nothing. Putting his life on the line for the greater good, and got nothing, becoming a mere myth. I absolutely adore this game. The core gameplay, the presentation and the deep topics it touches upon. It truly is one of the best Zelda games. It's very underrated, and don't blame it. It's stuck on the 3DS. All we can do for now is hope for a port or a remake on the Switch. Until then, we have to work with what we've got. Number 1. The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess. It comes to me as a bit of a surprise that most people actually hate or don't like at all this game. This is my all-time favorite Zelda game hands down, and I think it will always be number 1 for me. This game came to me as one of the first games I ever played and as the first Zelda game I ever played. This game is the sole reason I love this franchise. This game hands down has the best character development and best companion ever with Midna. She plays such an important role in the series, it's not even comparable on how other assistants are a mere fraction or decimal compared to her. People nag on the game for being slow on some points of the beginning, and I don't blame you for that. People want to get right into action, and I get it completely. But we have to understand the setting of the game. There hasn't been peace in Hyrule like this for a long time. Everything is in fact very sunshine and rainbows until the first attack of King Bulblin. The game's story is like no other, giving us more and more to chew on. The hero becomes part of a conquest like he never imagined. It might not be the utterly revolutionary Zelda title that everyone expected, and it's not without its faults. The game's setting gives us so much more emotion. You feel very connected to these kidnapped children and the villagers because you've interacted with every single one of them. It's not a very large game, but having this small setting gives us the opportunity of having these relationships with people that in other Zelda games wouldn't be possible. I adore this game to the ground, and I will never get bored of playing it over and over again. The dungeons, simply putting it, are one of the best designed in the series, as are Arbiter's Grounds, Snow Peak Ruins, the Palace of Twilight, and to be honest, I've never enjoyed as much playing through every single dungeon as I have with Twilight Princess. Even the Water Temple doesn't suck that much in this game. It's actually pretty decent. Twilight Princess's labyrinthine dungeons are some of the best in the series, and each requires creative usage of Link's diverse set of items in order to best them. Whether you're manipulating statues to mimic your movements inside the pristine Temple of Time with the Dominion Rod, or using double claw shots to cross deadly gaps inside the Windy Sky Temple, the constant variety feels great. In series tradition, Twilight Princess develops a natural language over the course of the adventure that makes deciphering its item-based puzzles intuitive. The combat is debatably the best or second best in the series, just behind Breath of the Wild's option of doing absolutely whatever you want. All the hidden training skills are so much fun to learn and use in your journey and make the game a lot more fun. These hidden skills are taught to us by the hero shade, which has been confirmed to be the Link from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. So, he has finally completed the goal of teaching his ways to future generations. The game's subtle nods to previous Zelda games through the hero shade and the Howling Stones are a great Easter egg. And that brings me to the final point of this video and this game. The soundtrack. You cannot disrespect this game's soundtrack. It really is one of the best produced in the series to date. As a matter of fact, you have been listening to various tracks from Twilight Princess the whole of this video. The soundtrack of this game never disappoints, and I wish more Zelda games from the future can become as great as this game is on the soundtrack perspective. Midna's Lament, Orchestra Piece No. 1 and 2, Marlow Mart Theme, Succumbed into Twilight, or even the Light Spirit tracks, are magical and angelical tracks that are all worthy. The game just gives us more and more. I could easily write a 10-page review of Twilight Princess, exploring every nook and cranny, detailing every character, every boss and every last temple, but this script is already 12 pages long and the video is already long enough, so maybe for a future video. Twilight Princess is a gargantuan adventure filled with a dazzling variety of places to see, people and creatures to meet and things to do. The scope of the game is epic and you can play it however you please. The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess is, in my opinion, one of the greatest Zelda game ever created. It is also one of the finest games I have ever played. The story is one of the best written in the whole franchise. I would love for people to give it a chance if a port becomes available in the Nintendo Switch. It really is classic Zelda at its finest, giving us a great story, incredible dungeons and unforgettable music. I am a huge Nintendo fan, but I will never stop loving these games for what they are, even if they have or don't have a huge or small number of flaws. I'm very excited to see where the franchise takes us and how the Zelda lore continues to expand. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a like if you did enjoy it, or a dislike if you didn't. Don't forget to comment, subscribe and share the video. It helps out a ton. I'll try to respond as many comments as I can. Stay tuned because next time I will be talking about Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity and how it affects the timeline. So, until then, I'll see you all next time.